Hey there everybody, it's Wayne D. Welcome to the website, WayneD.com. You're looking at Steve Barber, PGA professional from Rochester, New York. He's the head pro at Locust Hill Country Club. That happens to be the former home course of my college roommate, John Salamone, so small world. Steve has qualified for the National Club Pro. He's 55 years old. He's qualified 5 times, which is very good, but he has never made the cut there, which means there's still another level that Steve can get to. So he's been complaining about lack of compression, especially on the irons and hitting off the toe somewhat. So these are the first batch of swings, and I watch these, look over them a little bit, and then I kind of decide what I'd like to work on in the course of the couple hours that we have. So I'm going to leave this at regular speed and draw a couple lines, and we get a pretty good idea of what you can probably guess as you watch this what I would be wanting to work on. A lot of times when you get experienced players, you're going to look at certain types of trigger motions, and those trigger motions can be very, very ingrained and extremely difficult to change. It takes a lot of focus to start your swing differently after doing the same thing over and over again for a long time, and it really takes kind of a commitment to do that, because you have to really concentrate on that when there's a whole bunch more swing to go after you trigger your motion. So let's just watch that at regular speed again. So you can see right away that there's and he said he had a little trouble getting the club back. You can see that there's a trigger motion that does not involve really starting the club away. It's a hitch, it moves, but right about 3-4 inches from the ball, after moving his entire body, lower and upper, off the ball, the club will start to move again. And you can see the handle dragging a little bit after the initial slide to the right. But when the motion starts here, this is more like a starting point for Steve than as a dress position, because this whole thing right here just resets him. So that's one thing I'm going to try to do is encourage him to quiet that movement down, and I'll show you how I do that in a couple of seconds. Now as he gets to the top, it's going to have a slight lift, and now we're going to see the issue with that right arm moving behind him. You can see just above P3 we can see just a little bit of that right forearm, and as it goes up further you can see the whole forearm. So we know what that means. That means the arm is pulling back too much. And as we've also seen quite a few times, sequencing wise, once the upper body begins to move left and the lower body does not get started, you can almost see the pelvis tilt downward, and the right leg will stay in place while the upper body leans to the left. So this is now out of sequence a little bit. So he's going to lean his head back to where it came from, maybe plus a hair. But once it feels like the nose is getting too much on top of the ball, you know the club's going to probably throw a little bit, and the hips are not going to want to drive. So we can see the flippiness at impact. And when we look at it from down the line, there's the initial trigger, which is kind of a squat and a knees toward the ball, and then the slide. Now Steve is a good player, so you can see a number of things he does nicely. The club stays outside of his hands. Still a little lifted there after all that squatting. And the backswing just looks like it's a little inefficient with that extra length from lifting the arms. So I would like to get that firmed up a little bit at the top too. Again, just in terms of efficiency. But now you're going to see why Steve is a really good player. Look how he controls the shaft. It's a little bit out in front of him and the hands come in a little high, but the club head is trailing nicely. So he can still hit it, but if you watch the hand path on the way down toward the ball, it's going to go from away from him here. Watch how down and left the hands are. And this is going to tend to put the ball into the toe a little bit. Alright, so what do we do? Well, we're going to start off by trying to eliminate that sliding movement. So I just take a bag stand, obviously, and stick it right up against that right leg. Now I'm going to encourage him. We're going to do this first in a stop and go. I'm going to encourage him to take it back and see if he can think in terms of stretching out the right shoulder, the left shoulder, excuse me, while gaining some width. We want some space under that right arm at the beginning. Now he's going to let that stretching feeling in the left side here and the feeling of pushing the hands away. We talked about grip pressure under the right palm into the left thumb and trying to feel that width going out that way at the top. So we like the look of that. We like the little bit of angle created here. And now we're going to look for the sequence to begin from the ground more. So we want to get the right side moving. So we're going to change direction right here in those right pelvic rotator muscles, and we're going to do it against the brace of the right leg, and that's going to drive the pelvis forward enough to get about 80 or 90% of the pressure onto the left side by the time we get to impact. Now in a stop and go, we'd rather not have this little backswing. This always happens. Drills aren't that easy. So when he takes it back more, you can see the right leg. Right when he wants to go forward, the right leg is actually going backwards. So we're going to focus in on the lower right leg bracing in so we can get the whole right leg moving a little bit better. And we don't want to get that left knee so far out in front of everything. Now, given that, if you watch where this thing comes down, you can see he's cheated a little bit in front of it, but look where the hands are. And then check where the impact goes through the ball, much less flippy. So we're going to try that one again, and this time I'm going to encourage him to watch the brace in that right leg. Now this one he didn't stop as long, but if you watch the right leg, see, I like that action better there. And without the long stoppage, this is a little closer to what a full swing would be like anyway. You can see he thinks it's stopping, but it's really not. And again, if you compare that to the first batch of swings, we're doing good stuff already because we're achieving better impact alignments as we go past the ball. Now you'll notice that I have put that shaft on the other side of his legs because we're trying to get just a little more drive laterally so that his head will have more of a tendency to stay behind the ball. So you can see where he is now. Still a little bit more on top of it. From behind, this looked real nice too. So again, his takeaway was pretty good in the first place. So the trigger is quieting down. When he feels that width and the right arm not pull behind, he'll point the club more on plane, and it just won't go back as far. And I find that is true with most players, especially in their 50s, that the motion that gets the club all the way back that far is usually there's some kind of give or mistake to that. I think the swing's probably going to end up being a little bit shorter when the right arm doesn't help or overhelp. And this is another one where he just about stopped but didn't, which I think was fine. You'll see the club come down a little shallower and work into the face more. So the last thing we decided to do was work on some impact stuff. So we wanted to hit some punch shots. So here's the first one. That's a little longer than the perfect punch. I want the arm about here, but it takes a while to get that short swing. You almost have to pretend like your swing is going back about this far in order to have it starting down at the right time. So it's a little big, but watch the impact. Now you will notice also here that the ball is pretty close to the middle of the stance, so I want to hit another one and move that ball forward, because what we're trying to do is learn how to get the hands up to the ball, but we don't want the ball back in the stance. So let's check out where this punch shot goes here. So again, much quieter takeaway. It's a little closer to the right length. Now we get the legs moving. Now I can see the nose is now to the right of the ball. The hands are going to make it right up to it. We could use touch more push with the hips, but with the ball forward, watch how this ball gets struck here. See that? So that's how you hit a low shot with the ball position forward of center, which is really what is training you to get the hands up. Alright, so we've got better trigger, got a much better sequence, we've got a wider, simpler backswing, and then we've got that work to do on the feeling of that drive hold type release, where the left wrist is flat at impact, if not bowed a little forward, and the right wrist is still bent. All right.